thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. I'm excited to try to add to the conversation of young people and young activists who are bringing truth to power. They're part of an organization called Truth to Power, and they're in the studio tonight to talk about their roles, why they got involved, their fears, and their hopes for our community. I'm going to start with Andrea Sawyer Gray. I want her to introduce herself to you and tell us why you created this organization, her story.
Thank you, Vivian. Yes, we created Her Story basically out of the recognition that Black women's voices are often silenced. Much like the birth of your show and the movement that you have here, we see that within the Black community, Black women are often pushed to the back burner. We carry the community, but we don't necessarily get our stories put out there. It's the same thing within the women's community as well. It's the white women's story that typically go out to the forefront. So I created this event out of that recognition, and I really wanted a space for Black women to be able to push their stories out there, speak our truth so that we can help to free our people.
Wonderful. Talk about the event that you're having for that
Yes.
forum.
Yes. So excited. On Friday, February 5th, at Station Museum, we'll actually have Janet Baker. That's the mother of Jordan Baker, who was murdered by a police officer, unarmed. We're going to have her come. She's going to share her story, the life of Jordan, and then speak about the grief and just the aftermath. Surviving that type of event is something that none of us ever want to think about. It's inconceivable even for me to even think about. So she's going to share just some of the things that she's gone through over the past couple of years. And from that, we're going to use her story to push us into a dialogue about mental health within this movement, within this unfortunate criminal justice system that has left so many Black people fearing police officers, fearing for their lives, and just so much injustice that what does that do for our mental health, for our psyche? So we really are so excited about the dialogue and the conversation that's going to come from that so that as a community we can cope with what it is that we're going through with this injustice.
What a wonderful story and platform. I'm excited about it. Also want to introduce Biko Gray, your husband, a graduate student at Rice, working on his PhD, also working on a committee with me, Criminal Justice Committee, one of the transitional committees with Sylvester Turner. Biko, introduce yourself to our audience and tell us what your interest is.
Just a graduate student in African American Religious Studies at Rice University. I have gotten really involved in the criminal justice system and in helping to do whatever I can to help make it better, particularly in 2013, I think, right after George Zimmerman got off for killing Trayvon Martin. Once that went down, I remember sitting in church. He got acquitted on a Saturday night, and Sunday morning, Andrea and I had went to church the next day, and I couldn't worship. Cried the whole service.
Which church was that?
At St. John's downtown.
Okay,
couldn't worship, and it was a oh really yeah. So yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful church.
What time do y'all go?
We go 12 o'clock.
Yeah, that's why we never see you. I go at 8.
See, you go to early service.
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
yeah. You know we. So we.
When I was a student, I went at 12.
Yes.
So I was there and. Just sort of cried the whole church service, and then after that started experiencing it myself, living out in Pearland and being a Black man. You'd be surprised, and maybe you wouldn't be, by how often police attention comes to you in places where you're quote unquote not supposed to be, living in the suburbs with a whole bunch of majority white communities. And like I was telling you earlier, in 2015 alone, I had to have been stopped probably 4 or 5 times. By police officers, just in sort of basic things. You're going too slow.
Now tell us about going too slow. Tell me about that.
I was driving. Bae had told me to go. She was like, "Yo, I need something from the grocery store." And so I was driving. So I was like, "All right, I'm gonna go get it for late night run." And the sun went down. It's about 8:30. It's in the fall, so the sun is going down earlier. Driving, the neighborhood that I'm coming out of, the speed limit is 30, as it is the case of residential neighborhoods. I'm going 25, and a cop flashes a lights and says, "Oh, you were going too slow." And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, why did you stop me? And his response was, yeah, you were going too slow. He wanted to know if I was intoxicated. And I'm sitting here, and I had a glass of root beer, one of those like IVC bottles in the car. He's like, oh, is that a beer bottle? I'm like, no, sir. I show him the bottle and tell him, look, he was trying to find anything to sort of like make sure that he took me in on. And it was just extremely frustrating and unsettling. And I just remember thinking to myself how, this could have very easily become something much worse, and I was just happy that I ended up sort of making it out, to be honest.
Did he give you a ticket?
No, he didn't.
Because it's kind of silly going too slow, 25 and a 30, a residential area. You'd want someone to be going slow and cautious.
He assumed that, I guess, and once he saw who was in the car, he assumed that I was under some kind of influence, and so I think he was trying to get me on some kind of drug charge. People who might be under a particular substance might have driven too slowly or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was, that's why he asked about what was in the car. So that it was sort of almost an embodied sort of reality for me at that moment. But the truth of the matter is I had already been sort of getting more and more committed by that point. In 2014, Andrea and Truth to Power, a group of us, we organized a rally for Sandra Bland in Waller County. So we've been committed to this for, at least the last year. Trying to make things happen. So
okay, we're not going to forget about Danny. Danny's here too, and Danny is my regular co-host that has been in the criminal justice system for 26 years. He was out last August. Praise the Lord. He helps me. He works as my legal assistant, dealing with people who are in jail. So our Sundays go a little like this. I go to church from 8 to 10. Then I wait for Danny because he normally goes from 10 to 12. I stopped him from going at 10 to 12, and he goes to the Harris County Jail with me from 10 until sometimes 3 o'clock, whenever, and he has to be at his other job at 4 o'clock.
Wow.
And then he works from 4 to what?
4 to 12.
4 to 12. He does that 3 nights a week. Plus, he has an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Wow. So Danny works every day. He's did 15 years in prison, and he's gainfully employed, and I trust him, so he works for me too. So, I think he's learning the ropes on what criminal lawyers actually go through.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add, Vivian, is that by you mentioning that I am a returning citizen and that I'm one of the most affected, which the platform is about, is the criminal justice system. But what I did is took the situation of being in prison and looked at it as an experience. And what could I do to not make it a negative? Because when we got out, all these barriers were in place. So by getting involved in the restorative justice side of it is, I can bring awareness to what the prison cycle is like from a first-person perspective. And also, I want to empower the men and women coming out, I call them my peers, the returning citizens, like, what do you contribute success to? If they ask me, what are you doing? I said, well, when I got out, my thinking was, society didn't owe me anything. How can I get back in the community and give to the community and be a service to the community? And so that's the message that we're carrying at the Path to Freedom Prison Ministry in St. John's. So when men and women coming out, and they saying, well, we got clothes, we got cell phone, Goodwill offers services, and we point them in all the right directions. But our real message is, do you want to be a part of something that serves the community and not ask the community to serve you? And I digress with that.
And what's really impactful to me about Danny's story is that I've been in the criminal justice system since 1991, dealing as a lawyer. Became a lawyer in 92, but I did it like my third year in law school. I was already offered the job at the Harris County District Attorney's Office, so I clerked for a judge, and so I was really involved, is that he went to prison 3 times. So, I mean, he went in and out. So he's one of those people that people can give up on because recidivism hit him. And the fact that he was in the parole system for 26 years, and so, I think I need to put my money where my mouth is. I'm always wanting returning citizens to get jobs, so I decided I'd give one a job if he had time for me, because he had so many jobs. Because I didn't want him to quit his day job, but I wanted him to help me because I'm almost aging out with young offenders because I could talk to them at one point in my career as a mother. Right. And then I'm the same age as their grandmothers now. And the psychic is getting different. You know what I mean? Of an 17 or 18 or 19-year-old, when they keep calling me ma'am, I think they're not talking to me as honestly as they used to. And if they don't talk to me honestly, I can't help them. And so one of the things for the ones facing a lot of time, I thought that where could I use Danny? Danny is such a servant. He needs a little extra money. And how can I help him and him help me? And so, and he can be valuable to me. So I thought of this, go to jail with me if you give up your time, your Sunday, because that's the only day you have a little time. And he does. And sometimes we end up not even going to church sometimes because we meet at church, but we end up just going down to the jail because our ministry is there. Right. I mean, we pray for people if we have to. If they're too young, we just can't get to them because they're getting younger and younger, don't you think?
Well, your newest client was amazing that we met Sunday, and I don't know, I won't get into details, but when I
it's
came,
a murder case, right? I got
yeah,
so many. I
capital
can't
murder.
Okay, capital murder.
And when Vivian King got me, she was coming out, and I was going in, and the guy came out, and he looked like a young version of Kid and Play.
Yeah, he looked like Kid and
He's
Play.
real
With
light
the high top
skinned, high
fade.
top fade, and when he came in, he was shackled. And
Bad shackled.
and this kid is 17 years old.
Can you believe? Was he in solitaire? I think
Was in isolation.
He was in isolation.
And
They
he's-
have him in prison as 17 is an adult age right now.
Hell
right?
yeah.
That
And
makes no sense.
It's always
yeah.
been that in Texas. I'm a Texan. I'm from San Antonio, but I live here. No, it's 17 is the age, which makes no sense
Right.
at all.
They're
Makes no sense at all.
And I
So
think
this
about
kid
myself
comes
at
in,
17.
he comes into this one little room, he's shackled all the way around his waist and his hands. Now, I'm on the other side of the glass, so he's just in this room by himself. I'm like, why can't they take the damn shackles off of him so he can write something down that I'm telling him?
Right.
I mean, he can't write because he's tied up from his arms to his body,
Wow.
just sitting there. And he's
Wow.
17, okay? And he's not the trigger man, he's just with them. And the DAs know he's just with them. So
That's
I mean-
meant to send a message.
and he's going to be there. It takes the average capital murder to settle a year and a half is the minimum he's going to sit in jail like that.
Wow.
At 17.
Sitting at that jail, the one.
Hell yeah,
oh,
Harris
my
County
goodness.
Jail. 75% of the people in Harris County
yeah,
Jail
240 get
are
out.
waiting for their cases.
Yeah.
I ran my campaign on that when I ran in
240 get
2010,
out.
and now it's just taking traction. I was an accountant for 9 years before I became a lawyer, so numbers always appealed to me. And I never saw 75%. I just guessed it because that's where I work every day.
Right.
And so, but no one talks about that. And organizations don't do anything about that. When I left the district attorney's office in '95, I went to the NAACP and said, I'll volunteer to start this little section. And they were like, no, we don't deal with that.
Wow.
Just to show people indigent to keep a lawyer. Oh no, and I've been on the executive board. I guess a member now, but it's always just getting along. You know, after the 60s and the civil rights movement, it's like every organization head seems to have just got bought and sold by the mainstream.
Wow.
And it still seems that way.
Wow.
Just get along. You know, if you're the president of the Urban You're Leaving and I put you on a board, you're not going to talk noise, are you? If y'all start this organization and somebody comes and gives you a job as a professor or a better job as a nurse practitioner, that'll quiet you down. All right?
Maybe, right.
I'm just
Maybe,
talking truth
right.
to power, baby. And I just want to put something on your mind. Because I'm telling you, that's how voices get shut down.
No, that's real.
Okay? And I'm just telling you,
Go out
why
there.
do you think nobody's done anything over the last 50 years? If you study, you in school, study your history.
I know, I'm
I
aware,
lived it.
yeah.
I lived it. I ain't got to read
Right.
nothing. Okay? I lived it. I watched the movement, okay? I was born in '58. I watched the movies in the '60s. My older cousins, I was sitting there with them, laughing, trying to sit at the counter at Woolworth, in San Antonio. So I watched them. I watched the dashikis. Angela Davis was like my shero. I mean, I watched that blonde afro and her talking noise. I mean, I wanted to be her. Okay, so you can't tell me nothing. I listened to Nikki Giovanni. I walked that walk. Okay, so I watched. I'm like, but what the hell happened? My aunts ran beauty shops. They tell us every week, okay, we boycotting Crest this week because Jesse Jackson push movement says so. Until affirmative action came and they said, if we use 40% of your Colgate, then you got to give us 40% of those jobs. That's where it started from. I lived it. I watched it. Now, anybody told me nothing, okay? Wow. My aunt then would tell me in a month or two, okay, we can use Colgate again. We're not buying no more Budweiser until Jesse Jackson did all that negotiation, until it would push, until we're not buying no more because we buy 20% of all the bud in the United States until we get 20% of the workers look like us. Okay, it was economic. affirmative action. Y'all young people probably don't even know that. When I went to college in 1976, I wrote a paper on it. That's what it was based on. But when you hear affirmative action now, y'all let that turn into a dirty word. That just gave us the money back that we spent at those stores.
Anyway.
On those products. That's what it was. So I'm just saying, I've watched it. Ain't nobody got to tell me nothing, okay? The book might be wrong. I'm telling you. The person that was over the NAACP in every city got a handout.
So we need to resurrect
that.
That's what I'm thinking.
But I'm just saying, but you can't get bought. If you're going to get bought,
Yeah, you're
then
right.
what's the point?
Well,
And that's why we don't have no power, because the organizations are gonna get bought out. They're gonna get a little title. They're gonna get a little something. They're gonna get a little nonprofit money.
So I think that's why, if you don't mind me interjecting, I think that's why.
It's time for me to stop.
No.
No.
it's your show.
Right.
Yeah.
It's your show.
Every now and then I gotta rant.
It's fine. Keep
Rant,
ranting.
Vivian.
No, I think that's why Truth to Power is such an interesting organization for me, because it takes independent activists, and there's about 6 of us on the core team right now. We come together for particular events. We run on, literally, we don't take donations in that. We haven't taken any monetary donations up until this point. Everything we're doing is, by just sheer force. I mean, the Her Story event, if we're coming out of our pockets to put it on, to hire certain people to do that. And so for us, it really is about, and I'll pass it over to Andrea here in a bit, but it really is about, just like you said earlier, community service, informing the community about the particular stories and the particular connections that happen between the criminal justice system, systematic racism, and psychological dimensions. You were talking about the psyche of that young man, and I mentor a group of young men in Sunnyside, and you watch as they go from being 11 till about 14. 11, they're sort of like precarious little kids, right? They're little boys. By the time they turn 13, and these kids come up in Sunnyside, by the time they turn 13 or 14, they're hardened, they're angry, they're bitter, and I think
And they'll take anything from you. And if you try to help them, for men, the dynamics might be different. And that's why I wanted Danny, because I've been fighting with these dudes for years. I've had them cuss me out. If you was good as you were pretty, you'd get me out this MF. They talk crazy to me. It's like, I never hear any personal responsibility. And as the older I've gotten, I'm tired of getting, spit on and treated bad on people I'm trying to help, because I ain't got to do this. I can make a whole bunch of money doing something else, okay? I have the skills to do that, but I want to help my community, because I was raised in a lost environment. I could have been lost. There were a lot of people that were my contemporaries who were lost, who died young as teenagers. I watched my mother die as a young person. I live with different relatives. I have their story, okay? And I know that I'm where I'm supposed to be, working in the criminal justice system to empower people. I've paid for GEDs of kids I've helped. I've helped them get jobs. That's why that's so meaningful to me. But it's so hard if we don't do it. We've got to do it. We can't expect anybody else to do it. We've got to do it. But they've got to let us help them too. And at some point, there has to be a meeting of the minds. And I'm sad that there's no after-school programs, because that could save half of them. Teach them a trade. I'm sad that we've taught our kids that the only way you can make something is to go to college. That's not the only way. You can have a job without college, okay? But we teach them that they have no value if they don't go to college. That's not right. That's not right. And so we need to learn. We need to change that conversation. We need to fight for the things we can fight for. We can fight for after-school programs that teach trades again, like a lot of my peers learn trades. You can do. My aunts were beauticians. They learned that in high school, and they were born in the 20s. Okay, right. So they had it for high schools then.
Right.
Okay, and they did that when they got out of high school, and the one that's still alive is 86 is still doing it today. Okay, so I'm just saying, what's wrong with us? That's what worked for us. Most kids, we send them to school, and it's just a bunch of student loan debt. More debt than they'll ever be able to pay to start off with bad credit at 19, and they'll never get a job to ever pay it back. Come on, we gotta rethink the dynamics and the reality and tell the truth.
You're spot on. I'll defer to Andrea for more response.
Yeah, I was actually read an article from Ebony. It was from the September issue, and it said that there was a disorder called post-traumatic slavery syndrome.
All right, never heard of that one.
Had not heard of it either.
I'm gonna file for that one.
Post-traumatic, right? And I'm interested in hearing what the group thinks about it. Basically, it's saying that since as African Americans, since we were enslaved people, that it was several arguments. It's in our DNA. It's been passed along through the storytellings of great-grandparents on and down the generations, of this mentality of almost fear of one another, of not wanting to let each other in. There was this, the concept is essentially saying that as Black people, we are struggling because we were slaves. And that's the bottom line of it, that we have to deal with our past and the effects of it. And when I first read it, it kind of startled me because I was like, I don't know if I would name it that way. I'm not quite sure I would give that much credence to that. Not downplaying it in any way, but I'm not quite sure if I'm willing to label every Black person in America as having this disorder, this syndrome. I would love to hear what you guys think about.
Well, let me segue.
Kind of pathologizing it.
Well, let me segue because I made this assessment because I work with homeless veterans, and the veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
I saw a pattern from people getting out of prison, people getting out of the military, and we were the same people getting out of the military were going to prison. They were homeless, and we're like, how we end up in the same places? Well, what I realized is that the military, the experience there, if you go through a traumatic part, that's why they allow you to file for that. But what we're missing on, and I missed out on it, is that prison experience. When you come out, that's very traumatic. And there's nothing that treats that trauma when you're getting out. It's not even a conversation about it. And I was realizing that recidivism is tied into the trauma, and we're not treating it. But what happens in the Lazarus Project and the ministry we're working at, because it's a support group, and we're meeting these guys as soon as they come out, we get to address issues and barriers that let them slowly filter back into society to deal with the trauma of that experience and to get ready for this new experience. But we just one little group of people doing it. Look how many hundreds are released every day from Texas prison system, going back into the same environment that they left, that went to prison.
Well, I know one of the things I can say that I know that TDC is trying to do, and the Federal Detention System, or the Bureau of Prison is the other name, are the halfway houses, because that's supposed to kind of help you segue into transition into communities. And maybe one of the things we can all do as in our activism is look into that a little bit more, understand that process. But I know that there are more halfway houses now, and I think those are supposed to be transitional living facilities where they're going to work and helping them find jobs, because there's a resistance in our community. So as Black professionals, we should continue to help fight for jobs and create paths to jobs so that people know that you can go to this. We need to be able to create these jobs or find where these jobs are friendly to teaching trades, and giving that to parole boards and giving that to probation departments. And because I think that half the people, one of the things I wanted to do, and everybody kind of ignored me when I was working with the American Leadership Forum, is even if our probation system, so many people in this community on probation, like half the people of a certain age are on probation. So probation, I've tried to tell my brethren that the model is broken. Whatever you having them do now, that worked maybe 50 years ago when people had morals and values and they just made a mistake and they can just be, kind of pointed in the right direction. But a lot of people, their parents were on crack, their mama was on crack, their daddy was on crack, their grandmother was on crack. It's not grandmama or big mama that's still doling out those values that people can fall back on. They maybe never had them. They never been taught them. Their mama might have been absent. It's not their fault. And so you have to, sometimes probation now should be a model for teaching people to work. It shouldn't be community service. They're not ready. You can't serve the community until you're ready. Right. But what you can do to help the community is work. And so maybe, and what I wanted them to do, but I couldn't get them to do this, is go out to these big plants, where it doesn't really matter if you got a criminal record. Go out to these plants and see if we can send our probationers there, like they have 5 years probation, that they have to work here for $4 an hour. I know it sounds like slave labor. It's not really a part of the Federal Labor Act, but when you do community service, you're making somebody work for free.
For free.
So you might as well give them $4 an hour, teach them a trade, and at the end of, say, like 6 months, we have a training program, then maybe they get 6, then they get 7. And then, because they got to do community service anyway, why aren't you teaching them something during that? Making just a small stipend, getting them back and forth, on the bus or little car transportation or whatever, until they work their way up. And at the end of the 5 years of probation, then they come out with a real job, making $13 or $15 an hour. So, I mean, why can't we find those? Because I think we could help about half of these kids if we taught them a trade. Okay, and that's what I'm saying in the oil and gas. Nobody wanted to hear it. They were like, but what about all the people who need a job that never messed up? Then we're hurting them because they get the jobs before them. But it'll help all of society if the bad ones get a job. You know what I'm saying? Because then we don't have to have the jails, we don't have to have the prisons. They can be, men and women in their own households. Another thing I do with young people that are my kids that I've worked through the years, I tell them, go volunteer as a painter, a car washer, or, car repair guy. Because they'll say, I can't find a job. But if someone's self-employed and you get some free help, they're going to usually take that help. And if you work good, they will usually hire you. They just don't have the money to hire dead weight and train you. And a lot of them have gotten jobs. Go save you some money and buy a little $30,000 house in Sunnyside and fix it up if you can't get an apartment, if you're an ex-con. And it's really taking legs. People are doing that now.
Can I make the argument that experience is the best teacher?
Of course you can.
Okay.
And why do you say that?
And I want to support that by saying that what I've seen in my own life, in my own experience, going to prison 3 times, I tried to find out what was the common denominator, what was really the core reason why I kept going back. And what I found was what success was failure turned the other way around. See, I never failed when I was failing. I only failed when I was doing very well. So the pattern was, most of us when we get out, we get huge opportunities. We get opportunities that people never been to prison get. And what was happening was we wasn't prepared for that success. So when we got to success, we wanted to be validated, not by other successful people, but the people that didn't have the success. So when we went around these people that drink and smoke weed with our success, they resented that. And their job was to bring you back to reality. But psychologically and subconsciously, I don't see how this is happening. I'm enjoying my success, but this is where I always fail at, when I have a good job and great opportunities.
Yeah, if you don't mind me interjecting, I want to go back to the parents, the mother part, and it's very interesting that you brought that up. Janet Baker is one of those, in the conversation I've had, she's one of those women who has incredible morals, like incredible. I mean, I was just thinking about that, and I was thinking about, if I'm her, I've raised my son right.
Done everything right.
That's the one.
It's unconscionable.
It was.
Unconscionable.
We were on the phone one day, and we were talking, and she said, I've raised my kid right. He was doing everything right.
Damn.
Everything.
Tell what happened to Jordan Baker, Janet Baker's son.
So January of 2014, Jordan Baker's riding home on a bicycle. He's at HCC. I'm not familiar with what trade he was learning or what degree he was pursuing, but he's at HCC, a college student, doing what he needs to do, riding home. There had been a series he was riding past a strip mall, and there had been a series of burglaries in this particular area. And again, some of the details I'll keep quiet in large part because she has a lawsuit against the city. So there's certain things I can't say. But long and the short, he's riding home, has a black hoodie on.
On a bicycle, though.
On a bicycle. Not in a car. Ride on a bicycle.
And no one's threatened by bicycles.
Nobody's threatened by us, right? So, but long and the short, burglaries that happened around this place, he fit the description. An officer, whose name I will keep under wraps as well, approaches him and asks him for ID. And he says, well, I've done nothing wrong. Why do I need to show you ID? Sort of a scuffle ensues, and Jordan runs off, and the officer pursues him, fears for his life, and kills him. I mean,
but shoots him in the back.
Shoots him, yeah. I don't know if it's in the back. I'd have to check the details, but he definitely shoots him because he says that he reached into his waistband, and once they actually checked the crime scene, he wasn't armed at all. So, killed.
And let me tell you what's scary about what you just said. I'll let you get back to
Yeah.
how his mother feels, but what's scary about that, I get those kind of probable cause in cases all the time, and I'll talk to a 26-year-old white prosecutor who believes that that's probable cause. If you're black and you own a bicycle and you're and there's a crime in the neighborhood, the officer is justified in stopping.
See, that makes no sense.
And that's what's so sad.
That's
and
angering.
There's nothing you can do about
That is
that. I
so
mean, they will
angering.
argue me down. And if I say, so it's just because he's black and he's riding in a bicycle? Because if you're riding a bicycle, you know you don't expect to be stopped
Absolutely.
because it's and then I'm playing a race card now because I asked them that. You know, they pissed off because I said that, and now I can't talk to this prosecutor for another month. I got to reset the case because we can't have an intelligent conversation. Because I'm offended because I always rode bikes when I was young, and I didn't expect to be stopped. I didn't have ID on a bicycle.
Right.
I mean, who has ID on a bicycle? You jump on a bicycle, that's your freedom.
Leisure time.
That's your leisure time.
Kicking
You're a
it, right.
citizen that rides a
Ride
bicycle.
home,
I mean,
right.
riding home. I mean, I don't think, shit, let me get my ID.
Right,
Let me check
right.
this. Let me check that. And if I'm driving a car, I'll do that because
Right.
you have to have a driver's license. But I would.
Riding a
Even today, I
bicycle.
don't ride a bike much. I have one, but if I did, I wouldn't have no ID on me.
Right, you would, and that's what was.
But because I'm scared of the
Right.
police now, they know who I am. You know, I might would put put it in my bra, but that I'm not gonna have no purse on me or anything like that because I'm more scared of somebody robbing me for my purse. You know, so knocking me off the bicycle.
Can you imagine? Listen
An
to that.
officer stopping you and asking you for ID on a damn bike.
On a bike. That's what's so
Who
crazy.
has ID on a bike?
On a bike, and to hear Miss.
But every prosecutor, every prosecutor, if you talk to a prosecutor about that, they're going to think that's right. And that's why the
Probable
officer was
cause.
no build because they told him it was okay. The law has changed. When I became a lawyer, you had to have a reason to stop someone. You had to be able to articulate what criminal activity you thought was afoot for that to happen. What did you think someone did? I don't think that's the law anymore because the law, whatever the prosecutors say, the Court of Appeals is going to, all the way up to the Supreme Court, they'll just say, okay, whatever they said is right. Doesn't matter what they said, it makes sense to me. Because they know it'll never happen to them. There's a huge racial divide. Wow. There was a time that the Constitution contemplated that this could happen to anybody. So your civil rights were protected.
Right.
But there's two sets of standards.
When did it happen? When did it stop
Reaganomics.
being?
I'm gonna tell you, I lived those times too. When Reagan got in office, that's when it happened. That's when everybody
when
changed.
the war on drugs
The war on
shifted.
drugs
When the war on drugs came.
It was just like, you could sue your employer, but Reagan created the EEOC, so then you had to go through the EEOC and get a right to sue letter. Before then, you could just sue whoever you wanted to sue.
Right.
But I'm just saying, all these regulations that came into place.
Which ironically, he was a Republican, so he shouldn't be putting too much regulations on.
The Republicans always put a lot of regulations. Our Texas Penal Code was the same for 30 years until the last Democrat, Ann Richards, was defeated by Daddy Bush, and it's been changed every session since. Every 2 years when the legislative meets, they change the penal code. Ever since. It wasn't touched for 30 years before then.
And I did read that some of the justification was an outcry from the black communities because of
They always blame it on us.
Well, they said the crack cocaine was so bad in the neighborhood, and because we were standing out on the block selling it, we were selling it to you when you coming out of church. That
Well,
they
I
were
do
saying,
agree with that, but statistics
That was part of
have
it.
been. Yeah, I agree with that, but this is everyone knows. But you're giving people 30 and 40 years for it. Statistics says that when people are 30, the recidivism rate goes down tremendously at 30. 'Cause when people have been in jail, they've had people die, and it now matters to them.
You're sick and tired by now.
Yeah, you're sick and tired, and you're grown, and people matter now. They don't really matter at 17. You have that effort moment all the time. You get high, you don't care what your mama said. You're in that rebellious stage. We all went through it. Good. The people who in the system and the people who are not in the system. What's frustrating to me as a mother is knowing that my Anglo friends' kids, if they do dope every day, they're not going to get illegally searched when
And
they're stopped.
statistically they do.
And they will have to go to rehab voluntarily because they're making their mother's lives miserable. I have lawyer girlfriends whose children did a bunch of dope. But for me, my daughter, who probably smoked weed too, but I had to make sure,
You just throw her under the bus.
Truth and justice, baby. I tell the truth
We're
on
going to have to
everything.
edit that part out. Mark, edit that
I
part
said
out.
she probably smokes weed. I don't know. I know she did in high school, but she's 21 now, so let's hope you're not smoking weed up in D.C. But anyway, I'm just saying. But I used to have to tell her even before I knew she might be smoking weed.
Right.
No, you can't drive when you're underage. You can't do like the little boy at Lamar High School does, drives at 14 and the cops just stop him and tell him to go home. You can't do that. You're going to jail.
Right.
You got to have your ID. I taught her to copy her insurance card and put it right by her ID. I mean, she has a routine that she has to do if she's stopped by the police. Because I'm afraid for her. Because anything, don't ask him why. Don't get into no argument. Because Jordan Baker, and when people listen to his mother's story, the first thing people will say is, well, he shouldn't have questioned the police. I mean, people question the police all the time that are not black.
But I think what's interesting, and if you hear, I
hear
can't
people
wait.
say that all the
I
time.
can't wait till she tells her. I mean, just listening to her, I really wish she could be here to share it. But she said, you know, she raised him right.
Oh, I know.
I mean,
because right doesn't matter with racism.
And I
hate,
think that's
you know what I mean. Does right matter? And that's what's so
raised
hurtful.
Him, I mean, it's
she
literally,
did everything right.
And if you think about it, and this is why I'm so happy to be like, number one, I'm happy to be married to my bae Andrea, but I'm so excited to have her like be the one who created and curated this, because she talks about the psychological dimensions. Because it's not just I raised him right. How did it happen? Now I've got to deal with the grief of I raised him right. How did it happen? You know, like how. And I like, that's one of the things that I really think that we're trying to sort of push here is like, how do we begin to talk about, okay, probable cause issues are absolutely problematic, and surrounding all of these issues, as Vivian, you fight for justice and you're fighting to get retribution for all these people, and yet at the same time, some of these folks are struggling psychologically, like families are being torn up behind. It's like, how do we...
Especially the nonsensical crimes, the violent crimes. You know, that's another issue. But
But
when
a
it's just
loss of
dope,
life.
I mean,
Trace
drugs,
amounts.
trace amounts of drugs. Talk about the grief issue. What are you learning when you talk to his mother and mothers like that on the grief, and just being a woman? What are you experiencing with her story?
I mean, just the story that Biko told earlier, just hearing that a police officer would pull him over for driving 5 under the speed limit, I was like, okay. So every time he leaves the house now, I'm looking like, you know, like, is it going to be his turn? Is his hashtag going to come? Like, it's odd because I almost feel like a mother. It's like I want to protect him. Like, please, are you sure you need to go out? Like, what's going on? Like, because in Pearland, the police officers have just, you know, tagged his body type. He's black, he's tall, he has locks, and it's horrible. It's a horrible experience to see him walk out the door sometimes. So with me thinking that just as a spouse, I can imagine as a mother, especially, you know, with your daughters, what you were sharing. So as I've been thinking about my own personal experiences and then talking to Mrs. Baker, I recognize that as a community, we're all mourning. We're all grieving in some sense. In some sense of the word, we are in fact affected by this in a negative way. And that's really where the birth of this really came from, just so as a group we could come together and discuss it.
And sometimes I think instead of trying to make the majority understand, because they don't, and it's like we're playing the race card and you're being stupid, and you know, we're invalidated constantly, which adds to more grief. We should learn to just comfort each other.
Right.
You know what I mean?
This is all about us.
It's all about us. We
Empowering
just
us,
need
yes.
to comfort each other
That's
and
the
be
space, yeah.
unashamed. Be unashamed to comfort
Right.
each other, because that's all we can do.
That's the best we
That's all we can do.
Well, President Obama, and a lot of people don't know his history, that before he became President Obama, when he was Senator Obama, when he started out in grassroots
efforts in
Yeah.
Chicago.
and his platform was restorative justice.
Right.
So a lot of people don't know his history, but I'm listening to Senator Clinton, former Secretary of State. She's saying that that's her primary platform if she gets elected, that the top of her list is restorative justice. And I believe that it's our responsibility, if she does make it to the highest seat in the land, that she gets held accountable for saying this is what you're going to attack first. Like your friend, Mayor Turner, when he got in, he said, the first thing I'm going to do is fill the potholes up. And I'm going to do it within 24 hours. And everybody like, whoa, really, dude? You can really do that? Because I got potholes in front of my yard. I'm calling as soon as I get off this phone. But I really did in my neighborhood have these 2 huge potholes. And I personally didn't call in. I said, somebody going to call these potholes in. Okay, I'm looking at what time it is. But he's doing that. He's actually
And they say they mad at him at the city. They say that public works department
Really?
is hot as a firecracker
So-
because they're having to work night and day to try to get that, to fulfill that promise.
Yeah.
So push up Mayor Turner for being a man of integrity and keeping his word.
Well, let's also keep remembering in our Truth and Justice and our educational platform for our community is that the president doesn't make the laws. So let's just always remember that. That's where we're ignorant a lot of times. And remember, Congress makes the laws, the Senate ratifies it or edits it, and the president signs or vetoes, either signs it into law or vetoes it. So
Executes it, yeah.
sometimes we forget the roles. We don't understand the roles. So I will always caution us to realize that. And with the mayor, it's the same thing. I mean, the city council is the one that's going to vote on things, and then the mayor might have the last straw on it, but the mayor can't do it by themselves. There are certain executive orders that the mayor can do, just like the president can do, but it can't be to make a law because they don't make laws. The Congress does. So let's always remember that, and let's not shirk our responsibility in knowing who our Congress people are. Okay, because we shirk that. That's where we get lazy. We just want to talk about the president, but they can talk all they want to. Trump can talk. We can all talk. But if we don't elect a Congress that helps write the laws that president has, that we agree with, then we're just wasting our time.
Yeah,
and that's what we did with Obama. We were excited. We voted straight ticket. We got a Congress that was mostly Democrat his first 4 years.
First
4
time.
years, and then it turned.
And
on
then
in
the next 4
2010.
years he didn't. But remember, the first 2 years of his 4 years, he had to deal with the wars. So it was a lot going on. He had to try
And
to
the
find.
economy.
He had to find Bin Laden. Remember, we had been in war for 8 years and had never found Bin Laden.
Well, Wall Street had failed.
And the economy, he had to deal with that. So by the
Yeah.
time he tried to start working on health care, it was like 2 more years to that first term. And then it changed. I mean, we changed to a Republican Congress. And then all they've done is every month try to repeal the affordable health care that was created by the Congress, the Democratic Congress, just a few years before. So let's not forget our educational experience from that. If we've forgotten what we learned in middle school about history, we should remember that about our political structure. Let's remember it. So we're going to talk just as much about the President Clinton as we are going to talk about the Congress people.
So what you just said is, to clarify this, restorative justice is not about just taking a sign, marching, and protesting. It's about getting laws changed and policy changes.
And the people there that you need to know. And your homework for this next 3 months, I ain't gonna make, because you're so busy, I'm gonna make you do it next week, is
Okay, then thank you.
how do your Congress people feel about that? Because if they don't feel that, they're not gonna vote that. That's what we need to know. I mean, we know Clinton says that. We know what Obama thinks. He might even be nice enough to, they have a post-presidential platform. He might still work with restorative justice. And most presidents, the Democratic presidents like Carter and Clinton did more work after they left than they did while they were there because they could just focus on certain things. So he can still help tremendously. I mean, he's a young man getting out of the White House. So there's a lot of great things that can come from what he works on as his community service and money-making endeavor. And it probably would still be restorative justice. But we need to know how our Congress people feel about that. My congressperson is Sheila Jackson Lee, so I know what she feels about it, but I need you to know who yours is.
Okay.
Okay.
And
I need y'all to know who y'all's is. Y'all might know already, but okay, if y'all don't know, you need to find out. Okay.
That's our homework.
Because that's our homework tonight. Mother Viv is giving y'all that homework. Everybody needs to know who their congressperson is, because if you have a Republican congressperson, they might still believe in restorative justice, because there is some bipartisan support on that.
it is.
And so, but y'all need to know that issues that matter to you, how do your Congress people feel? And that needs to be a part of your conversation since y'all are community activists.
That's important.
You're right.
Yeah, I heard even Ted Cruz mention it, even though he did it just to get the listeners to listen. But across the board, there's a huge conversation being held all across the United States about restorative justice. What I encourage anyone that's on that platform and is to not have the conversation with people like you, but people that watch reality TV and keep up with sports. Change the conversation and dialogue when you get a chance or opportunity, because if you give them the information, they take part of it. They may embellish it a little bit, but they try to take your information and sounding well informed at the barbershop maybe, or at the basketball court. So when they argue, somebody said, "Oh, this is this," they give them the information that you gave them to support their argument. So that's what I believe is continue to have the conversation as often as you can outside of the table when everybody's having a conversation like we are now.
Right, right.
And one of the ways, if you don't know who your congressperson is you can go to your voter registration, like y'all are not in Harris County, but you can go to harriscountyvotes.com, and usually it'll come up, your little voter registration card and your number, and it'll tell you who all the politicians are in your district.
Right.
Okay, so yours will be Brazoria County. So if you're registered there, it'll come up and show that, but you can find it that way.
I would like to hear more about Jordan Baker's story.
Well, his story is pretty simple because he was just on a bicycle and ended up getting killed by the cops, because what the cops can always say that they're afraid.
They fear for their lives.
And the thing that it's complicated because there are a lot of violent people, so I do understand where cops could fear, but will a cop ever make a mistake and just say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake"? I mean, that's the problem. That's the part I hate. In every job in the world, people have to say they made mistakes. When I was an accountant, people can make mistakes. You can add a number wrong. You can see something wrong. Half of what I do in my office, if it's just typing a letter, everybody that works for me, they're going to leave, because it's cutting and pasting. They leave somebody else's name on it. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes as a lawyer. I'm sure you make mistakes on papers. But the thing that's frustrating to me is we, the people who pay police officers salary, will never let them make a mistake. I mean, they make a mistake. Why can't you just say, "I'm sorry"? I never hear a police officer murder someone and say, "I'm sorry, I feel bad." You know what I mean? Like Zimmerman, he murdered that boy and he acted a fool. Now, maybe he did feel bad, but it's like our right-wing brothers can never admit they made a mistake when it comes to a black life. And that's what's so hurtful. And that's why we can't get no satisfaction from our brethren in that regard. We can't feel better. You know what I mean? So we have to try to make each other feel better. So I'm glad as young people, y'all are doing that. But I think we need to focus more on addressing the problem for a moment, but addressing the solution even more. We have to tell each other we love each other. We have to tell each other we care. We have to care. I mean, you know what I mean? Because I find that we're living in a meaner and meaner world. And we as black people really don't care about each other. I mean, people in each other's own families. I mean, friends don't care about each other. They'll go to work. They'll go to church every Sunday, and as soon as you say something wrong to them, it's like, "Don't talk to me no more," or you hating on me. I mean, we have so much hate in our community, so I think it's harder to even heal because of that. But it's almost time to go, and we have a phone call. So, caller, please turn your volume down and state your comment, please.
Yes. Good evening. I appreciate your program. And Ms. King, the question that I have is this. Okay, I hear you talking about the police fearing black people, this and that. Now, with this new right to carry on, like I'm a concealed handgun carrier. So is it gonna be where even though you conceal and the police keep saying how afraid they are of a black person have to really consider if he or she want to carry a weapon, and would they only have to carry in a black neighborhood? Because if I go somewhere like River Oaks, I mean, what do you think my chances would be?
Slim to none.
Slim to none. We have to always, there's two laws. There's the law and then there's our law. And there's a law that's going to apply to us. So you know what you got to do, black man. You got if you got a concealed handgun license, you better keep it concealed. If you get stopped by a cop, you better tell them immediately, "I have a concealed handgun license. I have a gun in here. My hands are up.
Don't shoot.
Don't shoot." Okay, you know what you need to do. Call the supervisor to the scene, officer, if you have a problem. If you can, right quick when they stop you, turn your phone on so it can be recording the conversation. Just put it under your leg or something, or throw it in the seat so they can see it, but have it on record. That's what I would do.
And the problem I see is trying to hold court on the street when there's nobody around. Like my daughter, Sharonda Sneed, she's Sandra Bland. If you pull her over,
she knows her rights.
It's not about knowing your rights. It's knowing what they believe your rights are not. Like when I get on a one-on-one with a police officer, I don't use the Constitution to justify. I don't talk to him Constitution and rights. In 101, it's going to aggravate him, and he has the power to write the report And the judge and the DA, and we talk about this, they only read the report. And if I don't have a cam, he's not wearing a body camera, or somebody's not filming what
Or it
happened.
might be turned off at that time.
In
that
law,
conversation.
when he writes that, that's like him writing the Constitution. Whatever he said happens, that's what the DA looks at, that's what the judge looks at, and that's what the jury hears. You can get up there and cry and whine and say he lying all day long. They're going to only look what the officer wrote in the report, and they're going to respond to that. And that's what we have to understand in the community.
But that's also why we need to go to jury duty so we can filter through that bullcorn, because my white brethren believe everything that's in that report, and a lot of times, we know that ain't true. Because what my white brethren don't know, and I've been trying to educate my friends, is that we teach our children not to be sassy with the police. Like they'll think, oh, Michael Brown. Every white person I know, lawyer, liberal, not racist, really believes that officer when they said Michael Brown went into that car and tried to take his keys and struggled. No black person on earth believes that. And that's when I realized we live in two truths. When I had this show, and I had a very liberal white male, very good lawyer on here, and he said, but Michael Brown did this, and it hit me that night. That's because we don't believe Michael Brown did that. And so it's a totally different paradigm. So I hope we've answered your question. I know we've gone off, but you can't do what everybody else does. And if you work in an environment with white people, you can't do what they do. Okay, you know that. And so you keep that gun concealed, and you tell the cop as soon as you tell him that I got a gun and but it's concealed, and that's all you say. Is that okay?
I got you.
All right. I love you. I want you to stay alive.
Live to fight
All right.
another day.
We want you to live to fight another day. So we hate that it's like that, but that's when I realized is because, and I started having to tell my white friends, you know what, we've never told you as black people, because we have a truth that we live that we don't talk about out loud. I said, I think what y'all are missing and the media is not saying is that we teach our children not to buck the police. Michael Brown was taught that's generational from slavery. Okay, we don't buck the police. Our kid, my father, born in 1919, taught that to me. Every father I know tells their kids, don't buck the police. And so we know that aggression's not there. And the way I had to make this lawyer realize that is, think about when all these capital murders, aggravated robbers are caught. They ain't fighting you and shooting you. Right. They surrender peacefully. Okay, now if anybody's gonna shoot you, that'd be the ones trying to shoot you. Yeah. The ones that's robbing people with guns or murdering people, but they usually not only cooperate, but they come in and confess, tell me the truth, and then they want me to figure out how to suppress it when you told everything to everybody. So they scared to death of cops, even though they badasses on the street with guns. So we just have to own our truth, and we have to start that part of the conversation more, that we teach our children to respect the police. And that the police, even if you don't respect them, that they could kill you and nobody will ever know it. So our kids are usually not aggressive with police unless they high off of something.
And your Android and your iPhone is not going to be enough to save you in a confrontation with a police officer when he pulls you over and he comes to the door and I'm filming this, I got everything and I'm recording it. I'm not saying that you're breaking the law when you do that.
But that cop's going to snatch that out your hand and knock it on the ground.
But you have to know what society you live in. We make up 13% of this population. We want more and we demand more, but we are minorities for a reason. Not because of our skin, because of the mere numbers. It's more of them than it is us. And they feel, and there's something they call white privilege. It's not a blanket. You can't paint a broad
we got 5 minutes
over everybody.
These are going to be your last comments, please.
But again, I digress on that because it's not about me.
All right, so since we have 5 minutes, I'm going to let our guests tonight talk about whatever they want to. You can freestyle, and I'm going to let Biko go first. It's usually ladies first, but since it's your event, I want you to go last. Okay.
The only thing I'll end on this, I've actually said enough. The one thing I'll say is I think all three of these things are linked. I think you, Vivian, and you, Danny, you both did a really good job of showing that economics, justice, and race are all intertwined with each other. And the only other thing that I would add, and I think Andrea did such a great job with this, is including the psychological component. All four of these things are linked to each other. And I think that we just have to think about these things are sort of like interconnected web-like realities. And so as long as we keep that at the forefront, we can begin to work towards tackling this, to healing each other, to loving on each other.
Loving on each other is what we need.
Yes.
Okay.
And how would end just having the conversation with people who've gone through this before. This was so necessary to just hear. This isn't my first rodeo, and I understand that this is. Did you understand the economic power that we really do have? And that's been so, inspirational. And really has my gears turning. And I really think that economic piece is very major for us as millennials as we move forward. A lot of us almost brag that we don't vote in the Black community. So just taking home that point of voting and the importance of policy change, and really just looking forward to engaging with everyone on Friday as we discuss how we can psychologically move through this process as well of the injustice that we face.
And tell us again where your event is on Friday,
Yes.
the time and location.
It is Station Museum, and it is this Friday, February 5th at 6:30 p.m. And it is free.
And it's free. And what's the address?
Oh,
Well, tell them where it is. Like Alabama and Alameda in the HCC corridor.
Correct.
Of that Alabama Alameda intersection.
Yes.
But it's not exactly on the corner. It's in like the HCC corridor.
right up the street, actually.
Yes, right up the street. The Station Museum.
Google.
Yeah, you can always Google it. You can always find it. Her story. So it sounds like that's going to be a good event for conversation and repair. And just never forget that we love each other and to love on each other. We can talk about the problem, we can hurt, but if the mom is talking, I know you would do this because I can feel the compassion. I know you're a nurse practitioner in pediatrics and cardiology, so I know you're a compassionate, loving person. But what I miss sometimes is the love or lack of love in our community. It's the mean girl society. Everybody likes reality TV with people who can be the meanest and make the most money being mean.
Right.
And that's disturbing to me. Let me just say that. So in the healing process, we do have to give more love. We have to listen. Everybody wants to talk at the same time. We have to listen to other people. We have to care about other people. And there's a lot of healing we can do on our own. Y'all can do that for the rest of your life and never really have to go outside of our community to do that, because it's so much that we can give each other. And we have to start with understanding. So we have 1 minute, Danny. I'm going to let you have a little more.
Well, I want to look into the camera and tell you, Miss Janet Baker, we love you, and Jordan Baker Live mattered, and that we're here to remember him and to honor him and to honor the mother that raised him, and I don't believe people die, and he's very much alive because we're here talking about him now, and his death won't be in vain, because we're going to keep having this conversation. And we're going to keep using your story and his story to reach out to other people. And so someone else child won't have to experience what your child went through. Again, we're here to express, again, our condolences to you and to your loss. And we love you, Jordan.
So I want to end on saying the same thing, Danny. Thank you for saying that we love you, Janet Baker. You will always be in pain. I will always think about you and mothers like you. I mean, when your child dies or someone you love dies, a part of you dies too. The victory will be living with that pain. It's a pain that no one else lives with, but we can still love you through it. I watched my mother die when I was young, and she died March 1st, 1973. I'm still dealing with that pain. I learned very young not to talk to people about it, because all they're going to say is pray. Pray. Yeah, you can say that when you still got a mama. You can see that with somebody when you haven't lost your protection, because losing your mother is deeper than losing your mother. It's losing your protection, because nobody else gives a damn about you, really. Even relatives, they care, but not really. So I'm just saying I do understand grief. And what other people don't understand is you never get over grief. You just have to learn to live with it. It's like having an arm cut off. You just got to learn to use that other arm strong, harder and longer, and just hope that people can give you compassion along the way. And that's what I can say. It might sound kind of hard. I don't mean for it to sound hard, but I'm just saying that grief you never get over. And don't let anybody try to solve that for you. You just have to live in spite of it. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King, and hopefully you'll watch next Wednesday. Remember, if you have a story, call my office. Google me, Vivian King, attorney at law. Remember, I want to tell your story. Good night. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate.